Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and today I'm talking about 3 lessons I've learnt in gardening this year, and one of them is probably the most important lesson I have ever learnt in gardening, so I hope that will help you too. I was tagged in this YouTube challenge by Sean James Cameron. His YouTube channel, Sean's Kitchen Garden, covers allotment and vegetable growing with all sorts of useful tips like how to grow garlic. So what is this fantastically important lesson I've learned? Well, it's that learning about gardening is not just about discovering the facts. It's not just about discovering how to prune roses or how to make compost. It's about discovering your own gardening style. And that's something that doesn't happen immediately. It does take a few years to evolve. But I think I could have got there a bit sooner if I'd really thought about it. The thing is about how to do gardening things, like how to prune roses and how to make compost, is that there are several ways of doing it. And so you really have to find out which way suits you best and which way suits your garden best. For example, when I started gardening, I was incredibly baffled by the fact that some people went into quite a lot of complex detail over their compost. And they'd make sure that they got the proportions of brown to green right, and they'd turn it and they'd chop it up and everything like that. It was quite a work of art. And some people would say, oh, I just throw everything in. Eventually I discovered that there are 2 ways of making compost. And if you take a great deal of care over your compost and you get the proportions right, you will get compost much faster than you do if you just throw it in. However, if you are the sort of person like me who prefers to just throw it in, you will get compost, but it will take quite a long time. And by quite a long time, I mean about 18 months. And people seem to get really quite evangelical and passionately devoted to the way they've been taught to do things. And I think this can actually make us feel worse about our gardening. For example, I have lots of beautiful self-seeded flowers in May and June, and they create a lovely, exciting, unexpected amount of colour in the garden. And when I talk about this, I do get the odd comment from someone who says, oh, I wish I did less weeding because then I'd have more self-seeded flowers. And of course they're absolutely right. If you weed really carefully and thoroughly, you really aren't going to get many self-seeded flowers. But on the other hand, the plants you do plant are going to be really healthy. They're not going to be competing with weeds and self-seeders. So your beds will look gorgeous and you don't have to feel bad about them. And meanwhile, perhaps I don't have to feel bad about the fact that in May and June my self-seeders are gorgeous, but quite a lot of the rest of the year there are far too many weeds in the garden. And even your microclimate makes a difference. I first really grasped this watching the Impatient Gardeners videos. And she's in Wisconsin and she grows many of the same plants I do, lavender, roses, etc. But she has a microclimate that's even different from Wisconsin because she's pretty much on the shores of Lake Michigan. And this affects how cold she gets in winter, and in summer in fact. And here in Faversham, we're about a mile from the sea, so we don't get many frosts. But 5 miles inland at Doddington Place Gardens, then there may be a frost of -6 degrees when I'm only -1 degree, or even not minus any degrees. So within a very short drive, you can have quite different conditions, even though we are all given the same gardening advice. So it's a question of finding out what suits your lifestyle, what suits your taste, what suits your microclimate, what suits your soil. And of course, this isn't going to come quickly. The second thing I've learnt is a bit more practical. It's that raised beds are not so good if you live in a fairly dry area. We live in a very dry part of southeast England, and we've had quite a lot of hosepipe bans and some very dry summers. And before I had raised beds, I did regularly have very good harvests of vegetables. Since I've had raised beds, I haven't. So I've been looking at enriching the soil, I've been looking at the kind of plants I grow. But a friend of mine walked past the garden, he's very well qualified horticulturally, he's been teaching horticulture all his life, and he said, well, of course, raised beds need more water. And I hadn't realised that. And so I am going to try and do something about the irrigation. Obviously, I do take a hose out there and I water the pots. I water only new plants in the borders, and then I get to the veg patch. And of course, by then I've often run out of time. So I think, well, I'll do that this evening or tomorrow morning, and then that slips. So it becomes very irregular watering, and that is not good for plants, particularly not vegetables. The third thing I've discovered, which is a fun thing, is that you can have plants inside Christmas baubles. I got this from Julia's channel, Why Garden, and she's put some air plants inside Christmas baubles. The Christmas baubles are like mini terrariums. Now, lots of plants are not going to want to go inside a Christmas bauble, but air plants actually can be very happy in there. And Julia seems to have kept them from one year to the other looking perfectly well. So I'll put a link to that in the description below, because you might like to find out. You're certainly never going to find out from me how to put an air plant into a Christmas bauble. So I'm going to tag some people, and actually I'm going to start by tagging you, because the comments on the videos are so interesting, and I'm so grateful for all the positive comments. And I'd love to know what you've learnt in gardening and what you'd like to learn. When I talk about finding your gardening style, I really notice this on the comments that I get on the videos, because sometimes I'll get comments of someone saying, oh yes, I do that too. Or I'll get comments saying, I wouldn't dream of doing that, and they disagree. And actually it's really helpful when you disagree, because you're in a different place from me, you have different styles from me. And when people read the comment, you see that there are lots and lots of different ways of gardening. So that's number one tag is over to you. Number two tag is to Mr. Plant Geek. He has a YouTube channel called Mr. Plant Geek and a podcast called The Plant-Based Podcast. And Mr. Plant Geek is about plants in all possible ways, not just in gardens, but in food, in drink, in medicines, in everything. And the third tag is to the enduring gardener who's charting the progress of his cottage garden. And he says that having a cottage garden gives him carte blanche to grow any plant he likes, anywhere he likes. And I think that's a great philosophy. There are links in the description below to all the other YouTube channels I've mentioned, and also to any helpful posts or videos of mine. And if you'd like to see more garden tours, more interviews with expert gardeners, and more visits to the garden shows next year, then please do subscribe to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.